There are many records in this world that are considered unbreakable. Be it George Blanda throwing 42 interceptions in a year, Wilt Chamberlain averaging 50 points across an entire season, or the great Cy Young racking up 511 wins across his career. These records have stood for almost half a century without anyone even coming close, and for good reason. Like most unbreakable records, it took a specific set of circumstances as well as the perfect people in the right place for it to even be possible. Wilt is just a freak of nature who was the only person in history to average above 40 points in a season, let alone the time he averaged 50.4. He also holds 4 of the highest 5-point per game totals in NBA history, so he's just a one-of-a-kind freak athlete. Blanda had just set the single-season touchdown record the season before he set his embarrassing record of 42 interceptions, so the regression was sudden and surprising. But it actually wasn't really a detriment to the Oilers that year, as they would go 11-3 and make it to the AFL championship game, only losing in double overtime by a field goal. Unless Jameis is able to start on a team good enough to make it to the Super Bowl while he also throws 3 interceptions every single game, this record is pretty safe. And Cy Young, well, Cy Young has almost 100 more career wins than the second place holder. To cement his record even further, no pitcher has won more than 30 games in a single season since 1934, and even if someone were to manage to do it today, they would need to maintain that level of historic dominance for 17 seasons and come back to win one more game in season number 18 just to tie his record. Well, in much the same way as sports, television has also had several untouchable records over the 70 years since viewing stats began being tracked. The most jarring and unapproachable records were set over 50 years ago and took place in an entirely different era. See, today you can choose from hundreds of different channels, and if you don't find something to watch there, you can stream almost anything that's ever been made through the dozens of different streaming services. But back in the day, there were only really 3 networks to choose from. You don't like what's on ABC? Check out NBC. Didn't find anything interesting there? Why not hit up CBS and see what's on? Still nothing? Then go outside and find something to do, because those were the options available to the people in the 50s when it came to television. This caused there to be vastly inflated numbers when compared to today, with ratings and percentages higher by a factor of 10. With this in mind, we take a look back to a simpler time when television was a little bit different and a lot less diverse. The Nielsen company started tracking television broadcasting viewership ratings in the year 1950 with the release of the Nielsen TV Index. The index used a special meter installed in select viewers' homes in order to track their viewership habits and used the data to compile the highest rated and most watched shows in the nation and then break it down by demographic. Basically, they paid some families across various demographics from race, age, wealth, location, amount of kids, marital status, and so many more. I mean, really, some of the actual demographic ratings that are given to advertisers are so detailed, it makes my mouth water just thinking about all those spreadsheets. The Nielsen company tracks what they watch and when, and then use that ratio of the number of total viewers who watched a show versus the amount of total Nielsen families within that demographic, and use it to expand it to a national scale. That didn't really simplify it, but I tried. Anyway, the record I'm talking about today is the highest rating in history. Following the first year the index was released, CBS's show Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts would have the 4th best year ratings-wise in history. This show was a variety show hosted by Arthur Godfrey, and the entire premise was built around Arthur having these talent scouts who would bring on talent that they had discovered and have them perform for the audience. The winner was then chosen based on a decibel meter that measured the audience's applause. Godfrey's show is given credit for launching the careers of several famous performers such as Edie Adams, Patsy Cline, and many more. The show also stained his nice guy family man image and earned him a less than positive reputation, which stemmed from incidents like when he fired Julius LaRosa live on the air in 1953.
Thanks ever so much, Julie. That was Julie's swan song with us. He goes now out on his own, as his own star, soon to be seen in his own programs, and I know you wish him Godspeed, same as I do.
Or the over a dozen firings of cast members that took place across the next 2 years. The show would peak in 1951, pulling in a number 1 ranking with a rating of 53.8 and just over 65% of the viewership share. Due to all the bad press, the show would never again reach these heights and would slowly decline through the rest of the 50s. The 3rd highest rated show in history would come just 2 years later in 1953, when CBS's I Love Lucy posted a 58.8 rating and a 70% share in just their 3rd season on the air. I Love Lucy was a generation-defining show, having never ranked lower than 3rd in the nation during any season, and only ending because the marriage of stars Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz was ending as well, so it really didn't make for a great work environment when the stars of the show can't stand to be in the same room. I mean, I Love Lucy was only created as an attempt to save their already struggling marriage in the first place, so really no harm, no foul. Moving up to the big boys, we have the second highest rated show in history, NBC's Texaco Star Theater. Texaco Star Theater was the first #1 rated show in history, having received this rank in the same year the Nielsen company released their first TV index. The 1950 installment of the show was hosted by Mr. Television himself, Milton Berle, and featured various comedy skits as well as other variety-style performances from Berle and his guests. The show thrust Berle into the spotlight, making him one of the most popular men in America and earning him his Mr. Television moniker. In the year 1950, Texaco Star Theater pulled down a mind-blowing 61.6 rating and above 70% of the viewership share across the nation. This year would be one of only 2 times in history a show would pull in a rating above a 60. Obviously, because the third highest rated show was below that, and this takes us to the highest rated show in history, and it's a show I've already talked about in this very video. It's Wilt Still Chamberlain pulling down that first place ranking with a rating, nah, I'm just kidding. It's the 1952 season of I Love Lucy. This year would be I Love Lucy's second on the air, and the show dominated the rankings, pulling in a rating over 13.5 points higher than the second rated show that year. I Love Lucy wasn't only dominant in the ratings either, as the show also helped break several barriers for television. The marriage of Ricky Arnaz and Lucille Ball was the first instance of an interracial couple ever shown on American televisions, let alone that couple actually being the focal point of the show. To go along with this, it's also disputed between sources, but some have I Love Lucy as the first show to feature a pregnant woman who was being played by an actual pregnant actor, although due to the censorship rules at the time, they weren't allowed to say the word pregnant, instead saying expecting, in order to preserve people's sensibilities. The show pulled in a third place ranking in its debut season just a year earlier, scoring a 51 rating and well above 50% share. The second coming would be more immaculate than the first, as the second season managed an uncomprehendable 67.3 rating and almost 80% share of the total television viewers in the nation that year. This meant that 80% of the people watching television turned to CBS when Lucy came on. The record of a 67.3 rating is unbreakable for a variety of reasons, but the most prominent one is still its lack of competition. When I Love Lucy accomplished it, there were only 18 shows on the air. For reference, over 200 new shows premiered in 2020 alone, not even including miniseries or specials, or the shows that were already running. In the 2020 season, the highest rated show was Sunday Night Football, which pulled in a whopping 4.8 rating. This is obviously nothing compared to the 67.3 I Love Lucy pulled down over half a century earlier, and to further cement the unreachable status of I Love Lucy, the last time a show even breached the 40-point mark was in 1959. No show has gotten above a 30 since 1986, and no show has even gotten above a 10 rating since 2008. I mean, the 4 highest ratings in history were all set almost 30 years before the internet was even invented, and within the first 10 years since ratings were tracked. With all of this in mind, unless something major changes the television dynamic, such as a network offering such overwhelmingly compelling and rewarding programming that viewers can't take their eyes off the screens, or the government forcing every citizen to watch specific programming, it's obvious that no modern show will ever come close to breaking the record I Love Lucy set in 1952. And that's about all I got. I've been Semantics. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment about your favorite show, and I'll make a video about it. I really will. I hope you had a good time, and have a great day today, everybody.